Mark smiled as he walked across the parking lot toward me. I kicked off my shoes and reached for my heels. He opened the door. I placed my shoes on the asphalt, turned around, and put my feet in my high heels. "Here's an award for playing a gentleman. I'll watch you do it." There's something sexy about a lady in a tight skirt getting out of a car. He extended his hand to me and helped me up. You find something sexy in everything a woman does. Not every woman, only you. He hugged me tightly and kissed my neck. You smell amazing. Did you have any problems? I know you said Harry works from home. Yes, it's not easy. He didn't want me to leave. He thinks I'm in London and is worried that I might catch COVID. He is so cute. Harry never liked it when I traveled, but he knew how things worked in the publishing business. Lately, his protests have become more forceful. I think all this coronavirus hype has gotten to him. This time, he almost begged me to stay home. I'll try to make amends when I get home. Mark pulled my suitcase out of the trunk. As we walked towards the hotel entrance, he put his arm around my shoulders. "So old Harry looks after the kids while I have fun with his wife." I slapped him on the chest. "Don't say that. It sounds like we're using him." "Well, it's not really a use. I mean, Harry wants you to be happy, right? And I make you happy, don't I? Of course you know." "Well, that's it. We'll just make sure Harry gets what he wants." Yes, it was a joke, but it made me think. Harry is a great guy, and he always tries to make me happy. When I first started my own business, he was stuck in a teaching job that he hated, working as an editor in what little free time he had. Now that he's full-time editing, he's also caring for Emma and Andrew, allowing me to focus on building my business. He is a good husband, kind, caring, and a great father, always there when they need him. He attends all school events so I can meet my publishers and authors. The only thing missing is the excitement I feel when I sneak out to Mark's, but even that has begun to fade. I met Mark at the London Book Fair. I was there supporting one of my authors who was giving his first ever workshop when this handsome man walked up and said, "I know you, you are Isabel Roberts. Read this, and we'll talk about it over dinner." He placed a large stack of paper on the table next to me. I couldn't believe how strong he was. My first reaction was to tell him to go to hell, but when I looked into those piercing blue eyes, my resistance collapsed. I stayed at Corinthia. Pick me up at 7 and I'll let you know if anything works out. Of course, at dinner we talked about everything except his book. We both drank more than we should have, and Mark spent the night with me. Looking back, I can't imagine what came over me. It was like escaping my life as a wife and mother and going back to the days when I was young, free, and single. I did things with Mark that Harry and I had never done. I can't explain it, but acting like a slut seemed out of keeping with my role in the family. When I returned home, I felt ashamed, but no one noticed the difference. After a few days, I was able to push it to the back of my mind and pretend nothing happened. A week passed before Mark called me and asked what I thought of his manuscript, a manuscript that I had not yet read. When I started to prevaricate, he said that he understood everything and suggested that we meet again to discuss it. I knew I shouldn't do this. The first time I met him, I simply behaved incorrectly, but this time I knew exactly what would happen, and it happened. It seems strange, but the more often you get away with something, the less wrong it seems. Soon we regularly found time for each other. The more often we met, the more normal it became. We went from having sex all the time to spending time together, like a real couple. We went to art galleries and museums, which Mark said was vital exploration. I found this hotel when Harry and I first got married. It was built on the banks of the canal as a barge pub, at a time when canals were the main mode of transport for goods. It has since developed into a very pleasant country hotel. Before we had kids, we came here to escape the world. We walked hand in hand along the canal to a delightful pub and restaurant and walked back after dinner. I haven't experienced such romantic moments in 10 years. Now I was experiencing them again, but this time with Mark. The topic of his book came up less and less. We both knew the true reason for our meeting. More out of guilt than anything else. I spent the weekend reading it, and the topic of his book came up less and less. We both knew the true reason for our meeting. More out of guilt than anything else. I spent the weekend reading it and regretted it. The plot was full of holes, and the writing was boring. He seemed to have difficulty concentrating on the main storyline. No publisher will thank me for offering them such a terrible book. This left me with a problem. After such a delay, I couldn't just return it with a list of needed fixes. Mark thought I would pitch it to publishers. I did the only thing I could. I handed it over to Harry and asked him to do everything possible so that it could be sold. This meant I could tell Mark that it had been passed on to an editor who would hone it, making his good book better. You don't think Harry suspects something, do you? No. Why on earth? He gets what he wants in the bedroom. We probably do this more than most couples who have been together as long as we have. We don't have many arguments. Honestly, I can't argue with him. I just agree and then do what I want. What about you? Does Portia suspect anything? No, this is just another important research trip for my next book. Hand in hand, we headed to our room. Once inside, Mark pulled me towards him and kissed me with the passion that I only received from him. Within minutes, we were both naked. His kisses slid down my neck. My head fell back, and I let out an ecstatic sigh. Mark picked me up and lowered me onto the bed. He lay down next to me and continued to kiss me. I wouldn't say Mark was better than Harry, but he was definitely different. Where Harry always tried to please me, Mark took what he wanted, and that turned me on. It was this excitement that kept me coming back again and again. The fact that it was forbidden fruit made the excitement even stronger. Without kids around, I was loud, which always intensified the experience. By 5 o'clock, we were both satisfied and ready to eat. We showered, got dressed, then took a leisurely stroll down the path to the pub for dinner. The pub served good quality food sourced from local farms. Harry and I always loved him. Mark wasn't that keen, but I knew he wasn't there for the food. I drank too much wine and found myself giggling at almost everything Mark said. When we returned to the hotel, the administrator called us. "Mr. Macaulay, can I have a few words with you?" As we approached the reception desk, Mark had a concerned look on his face. Karen, the receptionist, didn't look too happy either. "I'm very sorry, sir, but we cannot fully fulfill your order. I'm sure you are aware of the situation with COVID-19. Well, in today's news, the Prime Minister announced a complete lockdown. All hotels, pubs, and restaurants must close from midnight tomorrow. I'm afraid we'll have to ask you to leave tomorrow." "No, you can't do that. I booked a room for 2 days and you accepted it." "I'm afraid we can, sir. In fact, it would be illegal if we did not." Mark was furious. He tried to argue with the poor girl, but it didn't work out. She finally told him to take it up with the Prime Minister and left. He was angry when we entered our room. He pulled me into the room, holding my hand so tightly that it hurt. I stumbled into the room and grabbed a chair to keep from falling. As soon as I did this, Mark pushed me down and lifted my dress. He pulled my arms back and held them behind my back so I couldn't get up. "Stop it, Mark, you're hurting me." "It's not so funny now, is it? I saw you laughing at me when that bitch downstairs told us to leave. You stand there grinning like a Cheshire cat." "I wasn't laughing at you, but at the situation." It hurts me. As part of lovemaking, it could have been a pleasant experience, but there was no love in what Mark did to me. He let go of my wrists and fell on top of me. I slipped out from under him and ran into the bathroom, locking the door behind me. I sat on the toilet and cried. This was a side of Mark that I had never seen before. I saw the door handle twitch. The door shook, but did not open. After a short pause, he began knocking on the door. "Isabel, let me in. We need to talk." "I have nothing to tell you." I looked at the red marks left by his fingers when he grabbed my hand. "And I will have bruises. Sorry, I didn't mean to be angry. If that bitch downstairs had been intelligent, this would never have happened. She did her job. It was you who behaved unreasonably." "Sorry, you're right. We just had so little chance of being together that I was angry when it all ended. You know how much I love you. This will never happen again. Please, let's talk without this damn door." I knew that sooner or later I would have to let him in, but at that moment, I needed time to pull myself together. I need to clean myself up first, but if you hurt me again, I'll call the police. Yes, of course, but don't worry, it won't happen again. If I hadn't drunk too much, I would have left it there, but now I needed somewhere to sleep off. I had to calm him down and make the most of his guilt. I washed my face and fixed my makeup. In the mirror, I saw that my eyes were red from crying, but it was something I couldn't fix. I opened the door and saw him sitting on the bed. He stood up and approached me. I instinctively backed away. "Oh God, you're afraid of me? Please don't. I'll keep my distance if that's what you want." He backed away and sat down in a chair by the door. "Right now, this is exactly what I want," I said, rubbing my arm where he grabbed me. I sat down on the bed and leaned against the headboard. "Then come on, explain yourself." He sat in a chair, looking at the floor and wringing his hands. "Look, I'm really sorry, but I don't know what came over me. It must be the drinking. This girl seemed so damn pleased that our little getaway was ruined that I was just lost. And I thought it was funny that we both tried so hard to hide it from our spouses, but in the end, the government stopped us." I rubbed my reddened hand. "I'm very sorry, but what can I do to make up for my guilt?" "Well, first you could find that poor girl and apologize for your behavior." "If necessary," he said, getting up from his chair and opening the door. "I'll go and find her now." "You're right, it's not her fault, and I was being unreasonable." As soon as he closed the door, I went to my bag and pulled out my emergency big panties and a long nightgown. When Mark returned, I was already lying in bed watching the evening news. "That's all settled." "Okay, now take a shower and go to bed." "Perhaps I'd better go to bed first and then take a shower," he said with a smile. "Do not even think about it. I'm too tired for all this, and we both need to get some sleep if we're going home tomorrow." The smile disappeared from his face, and he went to the bathroom. I turned off the TV and curled up on the bed. When Mark went to bed, he tried to snuggle up to me. I cried out in pain as he placed his hand on my shoulder, and he soon backed away. I tried to sleep, but I couldn't get the events of the evening out of my head for most of the night. I found myself making excuses for him, but every time Harry's voice sounded in my head telling it like it was, there was one of Harry's sayings that kept coming back. "Alcohol only removes inhibitions. This reveals the true character of a person." For the first time, I understood what he meant. I thought about Harry being at home looking after the kids and realized I had forgotten to call him. I turned off my phone before dinner and forgot to turn it on again. What will he think of me? I almost laughed at the irony. I had deliberately left him alone so I could spend time with my lover. But now he was all I could think about. Mark slept as if he didn't care. While I tossed and turned from side to side, he lay and snored. I must have fallen asleep at some point because I woke up to the feeling of Mark pressing against me from behind. I rolled over onto my back and pushed his hand away. "You can forget about it. I'm sick after yesterday." I saw the marks he left on my hand. Overnight, they went from red marks to blue bruises that were painful to touch. I carefully ran my hand over them. How do I explain this to Harry? It's so obvious that these are fingerprints. I will wear long sleeve tops for at least a week. Mark stroked my arm and kissed the bruises. "I'm sorry. I had no idea I was holding you so tightly. What's done is done, and nothing can be done. We just have to accept it and move on." He lay with his head down next to my hand and looked at me with sad eyes. "Does this mean you forgive me?" "It depends on whether it happens again." "It won't. Never." I don't know what came over me. I ran my hand over my bruised arm. "Come on, we need to get up. Otherwise, we won't have time to blink an eye." I half expected him to follow me into the shower, but luckily he stayed in bed. I stood in the shower for a long time, trying to wash away the events of last night. I found more bruises from the rough way he treated me. They were in places that would be difficult for me to explain. When I came out of the bathroom, Mark was lying on the bed watching the morning news. "What will we do if all the pubs and hotels are closed? Didn't you say you have a cottage somewhere?" I sat down in front of the mirror and reached for my makeup. "In Chelsea? Yes." This is a fairly large house, 5 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms with magnificent sea views. It belongs to Harry's parents, but they can no longer manage the stairs. We use it on holidays and weekends. Can't we take advantage of this? Don't you understand anything? We must stay at home and only go out to work or buy groceries. What will I tell Harry? I'm just going to go shopping, honey. I'll be back in a couple of days. Last night they said they were looking at a month. We'll just have to wait it out. I'm not sure I can wait a whole month to take another look at this magnificent body. Well, you'll have to do it. We all have to make sacrifices, you know. Now go and take a shower so we can go down to breakfast. While Mark shaved and showered, I put on my makeup and dressed in the conservative attire that Harry expected me to wear to business meetings. I went out into the hallway and tried to call, but after a few rings, it went to voicemail. I left a message apologizing for not calling last night and telling him the good news that I would be home early. Mark got dressed and we went downstairs to breakfast, where everyone was talking about the lockdown and how they were going to cope. I told Mark that I wanted to spend as much time with him as possible. How about we finish packing and check out of here, and then leave our luggage in the cars and go to the village for lunch and then take a walk around the village and watch the artisans work? If you want it. This is true. I'm in no hurry to return to my boring life. Let's put this off for a few more hours. Here's what we did. By 11, we checked out and loaded our luggage into our cars. Mark took my hand and we headed towards the towpath. As soon as we reached the canal, I let go of his hand and hugged his waist. I pulled him towards me and looked up at him. He looked down at me and stopped. He turned around, hugged me, and kissed me. I joined in as his tongue entered between my lips, and I raised my hands to his chest. "Wow," he said, releasing me. "It looks like you really forgave me." "No way in the world," I said, pushing him away with all my might. His eyes went wide and his mouth dropped open as he stumbled back. He stepped back, trying not to fall, but under his foot there was only the edge of the canal bank. The edge broke off and he began to fall. It was like slow motion as he fell backwards, flailing his arms and trying to regain his balance. His body hit the murky water, sending waves onto the canal bank. I watched him go under the water, and it seemed like an eternity before he surfaced again. I looked at him, floundering in the water. "Do you seriously think that I will ever be able to forgive what you did? Think again. I never want to see or hear from you again. Is it clear?" "I cannot swim." I stepped back and removed the life belt from the stand on the other side of the towpath. I turned around and looked at him. I asked, "Okay?" Yes, I understand. Now throw me this fucking belt." I threw the belt and he grabbed it. A rope was tied to the belt, which will help when you have to climb a steep bank. By the way, the best thing you can do with your book is burn it. A little warmth is the most you can get from it. As I left, I heard him screaming, "Come back here, bitch! Help me get out of here!" I returned to my car and made an anonymous 911 call before getting in the car and driving away. I had been driving for half an hour when it dawned on me. The events of the previous night were never far from my mind, and every time I found myself saying, "Harry wouldn't do that. Harry, my Harry, what am I doing with him?" I gave all my strength to Mark. Even when I claimed I didn't have time to see my family, I made time for him. We shared our favorite things. I took him to my favorite places that have always been special to me. These were our special places for Harry and me. I betrayed him, and not just sexually. I let Mark take a part of me that should have belonged to Harry and him alone. Tears flowed freely. Every time I managed to stop crying and put myself in order, the tears started again.